Okay, let's get on with advantages and disadvantages of equity financing. So in the last video, we're looking at advantages and disadvantages of debt. So borrowing capital or issuing some sort of commercial bill or unsecured note. In this instance, we'll have a look at equity financing. So predominantly, we're really talking about we are talking about shares in some form, either via a new issue, via a rights issue, a placement, or a share purchase plan. So what are some of the advantages of equity, and why would an organisation issue equity in relation to debt? One of the main reasons is its cost. Okay, it is cheap. There's no interest cost associated as there is with debt finance. You are giving up some control, and that's one of the disadvantages we'll cover. But in the context of cost, it is cheap if you're willing to give up part ownership of your business. Additionally, in terms of advantages, there is no addition to your debt obligation. So one of the disadvantages we said of debt is if you already have debt finance and you take out more, you're just adding more and more debt finance to your pile of debt finance, if you will, and you're increasing your liabilities. In terms of equity, there is no addition to your debt obligation. Even if you already have some debt or you have some money owing to external parties, by issuing equity, you're not adding to that burden. Lastly, in terms of advantages, your credit issues aren't considered. So when you go to borrow money from the bank, one of the disadvantages are you have to provide some sort of paperwork, you have to jump through some sort of hoops in order for approval. But with equity finance, your credit issue is not considered in terms of getting a loan. Now, if people who are looking to buy shares in your company may well look at the credit worthiness of that organisation. A Commonwealth Bank with a very good credit rating versus a small public company which might have a questionable credit rating. And remembering, a credit rating is a record of your ability to pay back loans historically. But for the purposes of actually issuing equity versus debt, an advantage of equity is that your credit worthiness or your credit issues that maybe exist in the past will not be considered. Moving on to the disadvantages side of things for equity, one disadvantage we've already spoken about is that loss of control or that dilution of ownership. You sell a percentage of your business. For example, at the moment, Fairfax Media, who owns the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age and the Australian Financial Review, they're looking to sell off Domain, which is a section of their business. So that's their online and in the Saturday paper advertisements for the sale of property in Sydney. Now they're looking to sell it off. What are they going to do? They're looking at selling 40% of it and retaining control of 60%. So they're going to dilute the ownership of that business. I think they're saying it's worth about $3 billion. So by selling some of it off, they'll raise some equity, an advantage, raise some capital, no interest costs associated with it. But on the disadvantage side of things, they're going to give up some control. And 40% of that business will now be owned by people other than Fairfax Media. A further disadvantage is that it is limited. You can only issue a certain amount of equity, for example, in that case I was just talking about with Domain, they're saying the business is valued at about $3 billion. So they're really, the most they could get out of a capital raising or some sort of equity financing in that instance is $3 billion. Now clearly that's a lot of money, but there is a limit and there is a ceiling to the amount that you can raise and access via equity financing. Further to that, it is a little inflexible. So debt finance, one of the advantages of it is its flexibility in terms of its time. Equity, effectively, it's selling a share or it's not. The pricing of those shares is going to be in line with the valuation of the business, but there is a degree of inflexibility about it. Further disadvantages going forward, shareholders will expect to share in the profits of the business, and that's what you're selling to them. When you're actually selling them shares or ownership in that business, is that they will profit from it. But from a business owner's perspective or from the senior management perspective, a disadvantage certainly is that they're going to share in that profit via dividends predominantly. And ultimately, disadvantage also, potential conflict. Every public company that issues shares must hold an annual general meeting at which shareholders are entitled to vote. And they can vote on things such as the CEO or senior management's remuneration, so their pay. So that could create some conflict. You could have conflict with large shareholders in your company about the direction that the senior management is taking the business. They may not well like a recent acquisition that the business made, and they'll voice that they may well voice that quite clearly to senior management. So it can also create some conflict and some disagreements between particularly large shareholders in those particular businesses and management. So they're the advantages and disadvantages that relate to equity. And in the next video, we'll look at matching the term and source of finance to the appropriate business purpose.